Despite being an underwhelming success at the box office, there's no denying that Batman vs Superman was a massive flop for Warner Brothers. The misguided steps it took to embarrassingly set up the DC cinematic universe caused so much trepidation for moviegoers as it caused more damage than it did good, and it raised a big question mark over the standards of the rest of the DC films to come. It was essentially a big, rushed mess that was directed by Zack Snyder, a guy who can't pace out a good story to save his life. Now, despite all of that, I personally found a lot to like about Batman vs Superman, and although I agree with a lot of the critical reviews out there, I still came out giving this movie a decent rating. However, now that Wonder Woman has been released, everyone is hoping that this will put DC back on track and be the beginning of great things to come. Well, I will be the judge of that. So in this video, I'll be comparing Batman vs Superman Dawn of Justice to Wonder Woman, and see if Warner Brothers' latest attempt at creating a comic book movie was for better or worse. Let the battle commence. With regards to narrative, Wonder Woman takes its time while simultaneously telling its story coherently and entertainingly. Batman vs Superman, however, has significantly more story to tell, yet it somehow feels much more slower paced and boring. On top of that, it was so convinced that it was being smart that it actually made the bad guy find out the identity of both Superman and Batman. And how did he figure it out? Well, we don't know. The movie just thought it would be far more cerebral by not telling us. Just that Lex has been planning this for 2 years, even though Man of Steel only happened over a year ago. So how does this add up? Answer, it doesn't. Also, on the subject of Wonder Woman, seeing as it's based during World War I, the movie did not incorporate any homosexuality or any bullshit that didn't exist at the time, and I must applaud the movie for doing that. They even talk about the state of marriage during that time period, and it was very refreshing to see a movie actually adopt the mannerisms and culture from the time it was based on, rather than trying to nonsensically inject our modern culture into an old time zone just to give some sort of meaningless message. The only downside with the storytelling is that the characters did feel a little dull in Themyscira, but I think that's down to their mannerisms, as when we get to London, the tone feels perfectly natural. Speaking of which, when Wonder Woman comes to London and takes it all in, she practically adopts the curiosity of a child. And it's especially interesting when her curiosity turns into anger, as she quite awesomely questions the ethics of some higher-ups. Also, her being a fish out of water should be so boring and dated, but it really works here. And not only does it work as character development, but it also works incredibly well from a story and comedic point of view. I mean, when you compare these fish out of water jokes to the ones that are in Thor, they are so much better, it is unbelievable. I also love how her concepts and beliefs clash with other people's. So the movie did the character of Wonder Woman justice, and she was ingeniously developed as both a sympathetic and learning character. And it was so refreshing to see her react and have an emotional reaction to people who are suffering and dying. You know, unlike Superman. Alright, I'm kidding. The Ultimate Edition clearly shows us the impact this all has on him, but still, it could have been done better. Going back to Wonder Woman, it even has a twist in the end that I'll admit I thought I saw coming, but I didn't. It even had a second twist soon after, which I also didn't see coming. They're not great, huge twists, but the second one did catch me off guard and have me jaw dropped. Also, unlike Batman vs Superman, Wonder Woman actually had a smart message that was incorporated naturally throughout the story, whereas Batman vs Superman thinks it is giving you a smart message throughout the story. So the film with the superior story is Wonder Woman. Now, tone is something the DC Extended Universe movies are still trying to figure out, and unlike Warner Brothers' last pitiful attempt, Wonder Woman actually picked a tone and stuck with it from beginning to end. However, it could also be quite dark and unforgiving at times, and that helped complement the movie's story and constantly prevented it from feeling dull. Now, Batman vs Superman's whole tone is solely based on brooding, because that's all you see everyone do, as the movie so desperately wants to feel deep and maintain the same doom and gloom atmosphere from Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy. The only problem here, however, is that this is a very misguided copy and paste of Nolan's tone. The Dark Knight movies were dark, but they also knew when to hold back to keep the movie from feeling dull and lifeless. Nolan's Batman films also had a ton of jokes incorporated in them, and they felt so natural and they worked. In Batman vs Superman, however, everyone is so monotone to the point that they don't even feel like real emoting people. They are all practically playing only one note. The only variation is that we get to see different actors reenact this one emotion. So without a shadow of a doubt, the tone is far more consistent, natural, and enjoyable in Wonder Woman. In Batman vs Superman, we have Lex Luthor played by Jesse Eisenberg. What can I say that I haven't said already? He's not playing Lex Luthor, he's playing Johnny Depp's Willy Wonka. He exhibits absolutely none of the characteristics or qualities of Lex Luthor, or any other intelligent mastermind for that matter. Every second of screen time is so uncomfortable because, as well as his abysmal performance, he has clearly been written by a writer who is under the delusion that he is being deep and intelligent and is writing one of the best and smartest villains ever. Even down to the fact that he has figured out the identity of two of comic books' most beloved superheroes off screen. And in the end, what results is not a smart and sophisticated character, what results is a misleading, deluded plot unraveler that possesses absolutely no human characteristics or even a consistent and coherent villainous motivation. And then we have Doomsday, whose only major impact in the comic book franchise is that he killed Superman. And the fact that he only shows up here to kill Superman in his second movie is a complete waste of a character and plot device that would have greatly benefited the movie franchise going forward. And as for the villains in Wonder Woman, well, we have three. One is Dr. Poison, the other is Ludendorff, and the final one is Ares. And all I will say about Ares is that his final form at times would remind me of that crappy CGI piece of crap from Suicide Squad. And he was a pretty lame bad guy at that point. But everything prior to that about his influence over man I thought was ingeniously handled, and once he expands on that, that's where the clever message of this movie comes from. But on the whole, the villains in Wonder Woman are weak. They are very stock, and there was even a scene where they started laughing like over-the-top cartoon characters, which came completely out of nowhere. Now, despite all that, I am not particularly mad at these villains like I am with the equivalent from Marvel, and there's two reasons for that. One, Marvel are nearing 24 movies and they have still yet to make a great bad guy. And two, these villains actually do something. They actually wipe out a large population of people, including children, and that is actually very villainous. If a movie has been given weak villains, then they should at least compensate to make them do something instead of just looking villainous and speaking in a deep voice. The bad guys in Wonder Woman really do something and also have a pretty decent agenda, so that's why I am scraping at a pass with these guys. But the question remains, are they better than Doomsday and Lex Luthor from Batman vs Superman? Of course they are, who am I kidding? Let's not even build this up. Batman vs Superman took these great and iconic villains and butchered both of them and made them look like absolutely nothing but a joke in the eyes of familiar viewers and new viewers who are not aware of them in the past. The fact that Wonder Woman has weak villains and still they are superior to Lex Luthor and Doomsday is so sad it's not even funny. One of the best elements Batman vs Superman has going for it is the action sequences. They are all fantastic. Oddly enough though, all the action is pretty much flawless with the exception of the Batman and Superman fight. I mean, it started off good, but after Superman gets knocked down, the pacing of this fight suddenly becomes annoyingly slow. Also, the special effects in the climax fight for Wonder Woman look like a video game. I'm not kidding, they looked that fake at times. Both Batman vs Superman and Wonder Woman also have a warehouse action scene, and they are both fantastic, as they showcase our hero's abilities while seamlessly blending it with jaw-dropping choreography. Having said that, the warehouse scene as well as all the other action scenes are far superior in Batman vs Superman. Now, none of them are bad in Wonder Woman, but none of them are great or memorable either. After watching BVS for the first time, I remembered every single action scene because they had unbelievable choreography, coherent and fast-paced editing, and above all, they were memorable. And I actually wanted to watch all of them again, especially the warehouse scene. In Wonder Woman, they are definitely good, but of all the stuff I came away remembering, the action wasn't really one of them. And on top of that, the editing and choreography didn't always connect either. So because of that, the action is far superior in Batman vs Superman. Now, there are a lot of side characters, particularly in Batman vs Superman, and they get the job done well. Lawrence Fishburne does great as Perry White, Jeremy Irons does good as Alfred, and all the side characters in Wonder Woman are handled well too. So I'll just talk about our primary side characters for both films, the person who is a companion to our hero and also has a large amount of screen time in the movie. So in Batman vs Superman, we have Lois, played by Amy Bloody Adams. Now, I have another Versus video coming up in the future where I talk at length about all the reasons I downright despise this character, but for now I will just keep it brief. Simply put, this character is a tool. The movie so blatantly wants to make her a strong girlfriend character, but what's incredibly frustrating about it is that the script constantly tries to give her something to do, but all she ends up doing is either making things worse or accomplishes nothing. At which point it makes you ask, what the hell are you doing here? And the final straw for me was when she pointlessly took the Kryptonite spear and threw it into the water, only to then find out that our heroes need it to stop Doomsday, which she somehow puts together from this distance. So she rushes to retrieve it, you know, after dumping it in the first place, and what do you know, she ends up being in danger. If the movie had sense and killed her off at this point, I would have cheered out loud in the cinema and instantly awarded it with more points, but unfortunately, we weren't that lucky. So yes, she is a completely pointless character, and just looking at her puts me off, as all I see is a contrived and petty, attention-seeking tool. Now, in Wonder Woman, we have Steve Trevor, played by Chris Pine. Now, Chris Pine's character is actually the comic relief of the movie, but he is effective comic relief. When Wonder Woman comes to London, he essentially takes her under his wing, and surprisingly, they develop a unique kind of chemistry. Something that Marvel attempted to do with Thor and failed. And it is miles above the so-called relationship that Superman and Lois have, and they had like 2 films to set it up. And unlike Lois, instead of being forcefully written into situations, he was naturally getting involved and played a pivotal part in getting the job done. He is also a great motivator for Wonder Woman and gives her some actual support, whereas Lois tries to give Superman support but it never works. So with regards to the main side character of both films, Chris Pine from the Wonder Woman movie wins this round hands down. Despite Warner Bros.' recent attempts, I am glad to say that from the very beginning, Wonder Woman did not feel like a Marvel movie, nor did it feel like a Christopher Nolan movie. It felt like its own thing, and that's largely because Warner Bros. Pretty much kept their infectious hands out of the production. And the fact that this is universally the first great DC movie since 2012 speaks volumes that, not surprisingly, Warner Bros. Are the root cause for the poor DC films we have been getting lately. Batman vs Superman is the very definition of a movie that is a 3-hour-long trailer for a sequel and a bunch of spin-offs. Wonder Woman is the opposite. It picked a character to tell a movie about, it told a focused story, and it did not even once try to hint or set up future films. Additionally, all the jokes hit their mark, and they never overstayed their welcome, unlike practically all other Marvel movies. And that's what I like here. I'm able to compare the themes of this film to Marvel, but not because they are comparable or similar. I'm able to compare it because one did better than the other, and that's exactly what I want from a DC and Marvel movie. I want different styles and executions that I can compare and contrast, and it's such a great feeling to know that I can do it. And I will also say this, surprisingly, the Wonder Woman movie felt like it had more balls than any of the other Marvel films, from a story point of view, a tonal point of view, and even a structural point of view. It's time for the scores. Batman vs Superman gets a strong 6 out of 10, and Wonder Woman gets an 8. This is how you make a badass movie with a female lead, not like this. This easily beats out a good 80% of the Marvel movies out there, and it did it by being its own thing, and I really hope Warner Bros. Keeps that in mind going forward. Now the big question, does this restore my faith in DC movies? Well, no it bloody doesn't. I don't know what else to say except one right does not make up for the horrible repercussions of these 2 films, especially this one, as its flaws are so great that they are undoubtedly going to affect the upcoming Justice League movie and all future Superman sequels. Here's hoping this is a great start for things to come, and so far Geoff Johns' involvement seems to be working very effectively, and he wasn't even involved with Wonder Woman from the very beginning. Imagine what can happen when he gets involved with a project right from the start. A shining example of this is the Flash TV show, and most of you know how much I love this series. So that's it for another Versus episode, guys. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up, don't forget to subscribe, and also share this video so more people can be aware of the show. Thank you so much for watching, I really appreciate it, and I will catch all of you next time. Take care.